Hey everyone, and welcome to this episode of Co-Creating with AI. I'm Martin Kjellström, and this is my good friend Rasmus. How are you today, Rasmus?
Good, thank you. I'm up in the mountains, so I've actually been out in the slopes a little bit today, which was amazing. It's sunny, and there's something when like being really high above ground that I don't know, like seeing very far, that sort of speaks to me on some deeper level or something. How are you doing?
I'm great. The weather here is not exactly nice today. Super gray and uh, not at all as sunny as I would have hoped after seeing the weather forecast at the beginning of the week. But at least winter is seemingly over, and we're going towards lighter times and warmer times.
Yeah, I mean it feels like it at least, but Swedish April is
Yeah.
sneaky.
So, what's happening in the AI world, viewed from above, as you like it?
Yeah, from the mountains I can see the robots marching, taking all our jobs. No, but I think it's nice to get away and sort of get a little bit of perspective. I mean, the big thing that's happened since we last spoke or recorded an episode at least is the ChatGPT plugins demo that was released, which gave, I think, a very clear frame of, I don't know, it sort of just clarified very tangibly, like in a very tangible way, that this is a new interface, that AI is a new interface, that you will be able to do pretty much everything you can do today yourself via computer, you will be able to do via chat interface or a natural language interface, at least, whether that's text or it's speech, probably the primary ones, and just the sheer amount of different examples that you could, of valuable things that ChatGPT could do for you using different plugins, like, finding a recipe, putting all those ingredients in Instacart, and then you just have to click to order, or was, yeah, I mean, it could sort of generate different types of files for you. It can understand different types of files you dropped in. It could utilize external databases to perform tasks for you. It could Google things, or maybe Bing things, I don't know, at least search for things in the browser and then use that information to um, yeah, I mean, to accomplish things for you. And of course, this sort of just on a higher level, I think, at least for us, but for most software products, it's like you got to ask yourself the question: how are we relevant in this new interface? Just as previously we had to ask ourselves, how are we relevant on mobile? A lot of companies had to do that. Yeah, so a bit like, I think it's a pretty big thing. I think, of course, it hasn't been released yet, really. It's in very early testing with a limited user group, and we haven't yet tried it out ourselves, or at least I haven't. But yeah, I think it sort of makes it very tangible what this new interface will be, and that it will be able to um, be used for so many different things. What are you thinking about last couple of weeks?
First of all, I think we are not yet at the App Store moment for OpenAI because it hasn't launched yet to general availability, and I think they are probably amassing companies that want to build plugins, and that's the primary reason why it's not launched yet, because they want to go out with a highly valuable product where a lot of companies already have their plugins integrated. But that could be fairly soon because it's a very easy integration. And unless they run into any major problems, I think we're going to see it come out soon for a lot of people. But I think that the things you talk about are the same views I have, that this is really going to be a game changer where AI is going to start to connect to the world in a real way. And I always say that the web that we built over the past 20 years is the perfect text interface to all of what we do as humans, and now we build a text AI. So it's basically like the perfect progression for to allow AI to interface with our everyday lives.
And it's interesting because it's I think that's another good point. So what I was pointing out was sort of like it's a new interface. In that way, it's comparable to mobile. But what you're saying is also it's like it's similar to the internet as well, in the sense that it's something that connects everything we do, or can connect everything we do. And if I come back to the plugins, I'm not sure like how if this will be the way they do it. But let's say that, I mean, for our product for Multiply, we can ask, like, our users can use ChatGPT within our product, including plugins. Then that means that AI can connect our product with other products. So it's like the ultimate kind of API connector in theory, because we can, users within our product can utilize the full capabilities of that app's ecosystem. So just as, if you have a product that's has an open API, then you can, in theory, connect to all the other, or you can, in practice, actually connect to all the other products that have open APIs. So I think it's something around that connectivity as well. So I think it's a little bit like it's starting to visualize that it's both like mobile and like the internet, and
Mm,
and I think maybe it's something else as well. Um,
sure. And they are also connecting to Zapier.
mm,
Zapier is awesome big store of many integrations. So e- even if you don't build a ChatGPT plugin as a company, if you have a Zapier plugin, uh, your offerings or your web services might be available to OpenAI and ChatGPT. And one question we've talked about is whether this will be available through the API as well. If the AI version, sorry, the API version of the AI will also have the plugins, or if it will be a user facing thing. But it makes sense for it to be um, part of the API. That's how they've rolled out everything so far. That to make it available through API as well, and I think that makes sense as a strategy for them. And it also makes a really good sense for users to get that for that capability available in all products using um, OpenAI services.
yeah, it's interesting because I think it scared a bunch of developers as well, uh, and a bunch of software companies, because up until now, it's been a little bit like, oh, right, yeah, I mean, OpenAI provides us all with the AI capabilities that we, I mean, of course, have to introduce to our products because people expect it. And then you have ChatGPT, and that's cool and all. But now it's a little bit like they're also like, yeah, I mean, this is a new interface where you got to be relevant, and they can, in theory, go, more an open approach, which I also think, I agree with you. I think that's the way they're going to go. But if you imagine that they were Apple instead, if they would have the DNA of Apple, which, they might make that choice, then it's something, it's a very unique interface that could very quickly capture a large part of the total usage time of all computers and mobile. Just as
Mm,
Google has been like, you go to Google to do something. Here you will go to ChatGPT to search and to get answers and to get shit done. And to, there's so many things that you can, in theory, do through this interface, especially as it's able to use all the other like software products out there. So
mm,
it's going to be interesting to see actually. I mean, I could imagine the strategy where they keep the plugins through their own interface and then give everyone else access to, um, I mean, their base AI capabilities, through the API. But I mean, it's too early to say, right? But it could
mm.
make sense as a strategy. Um, we'll have to see. I mean, it's just guessing.
Yeah, well, I guess we'll see soon.
Mm.
Then the other development that was super interesting to see this week was the advent of um, autonomous AI. It started out actually last week with a paper by a Japanese researcher called Kajima that released um, code for a task-driven autonomous AI agent based on GPT. And one interesting tidbit about his project was that his paper, the research paper that he released alongside with his code, was written by GPT-4. Like he just wrote the code, and then he let the GPT-4 write the research paper to go with it. And GPT-4 had included some a whole chapter on the risks of building an autonomous AI, and maybe prompted the AI to do that just to clear his own back. It's sort of a sometimes I feel it's sort of a greenwashing going on in some AI projects when they feel like maybe this is taking things a bit too far too fast. Then they're throwing in a few paragraphs about how they are aligning their AI, or like these are the risks involved, but not really doing anything about them.
And what were the
But anyway,
basics of it, like of
yeah.
the
So
how does it
anyway,
work?
the basics is that he's augmenting an interface towards GPT-4 with a task database. So he keeps a database of things that he's asking the AI to do, and the AI itself, when it completes a task, the AI thinks about what are the follow up tasks I should do now when I completed this first task, and it enters them into the task database as well. And then there's another agent that keeps reprioritization, that reprioritizes the task list
Mm.
at all times. So the most important task is at the top, and so it just builds this continuous loop of the AI never running out of work, basically. And
But also then the AI generating the tasks it's supposed to do, and then doing them, and then generating new tasks.
yeah,
Uh,
exactly. So it becomes that's the autonomous part. So it gets sort of this task list becomes the internal state of the AI, and
I
it
mean
has an idea
that's like a
what it does.
sci-fi story where it just like ends up with like maximize paper clips, produce the
Yeah.
maximum amount of paper clips. That's the AI joke, right? That the
Yes.
AI doesn't have to be evil to kill all of humanity. It just needs to get stuck on something ridiculous. Like the most important thing is to produce as many paper clips as possible, and
Yeah.
then it does whatever tasks it needs to get that done.
Yeah. And then someone released um, another open source project based on that called Baby AGI, and which is basically the same thing, just with less moving parts, doing the same thing with a tighter core in loop. Baby AGI is alluding to the fact that then that, just as you say, that maybe these are the first steps to like this is the embryo or the baby of future AGI uh, that can act autonomously in the world.
Yeah, I mean it is very interesting. I mean, so what? I mean, if, I'm just thinking if I would use that, if I think about this baby AGI or this autonomous AI as my assistant, as something that helps me, then would I really set like how would I use this? I mean, I would set like an overarching goal and then a first task, and then it can create tasks within that goal. That could make sense, but to just have it come up with a new task after it's done what I asked it to, like I ask it to you know, write an email to a client for me. And then it's done with that. And then it just makes up something else to do without having like a clear context or a clear goal or a clear like
No,
framework
I
for
think
evaluating.
it uses the previous task and goal
Okay.
setting as context for the new task.
Hmm. So it assumes that the first thing you ask it to do is something you want more of almost, or is something that informs the AI what your priorities are, sort
Hmm.
of.
And it sort of one thing it does is that it addresses the one of the biggest challenges with AI, that people assumes that it will, like, the quality of the output should be top notch from the first iteration, which is not what you would expect from a human. You just, since you're used to software producing perfect results or not being able to improve their results, you assume the AI is the same. But an AI can actually iterate over a result and make it better and
Mm.
better over time. And this is a step towards that, building AI applications where you can not, instead of just asking the AI write a letter about on this topic or write a poem, you can tell it to spend an hour writing this letter or spend 10 minutes writing this poem, and then it can come up with a process for that and spend time on solving a problem. And if that is of significant scope, so it's not write a poem, more like do a market overview of the oil industry in Asia or something like that, then of course there are a lot of research to be done. And this is a step towards making AI that is really capable of taking on big projects like that.
Yeah, it's amazing actually. Coming back to the other part of our the name of this podcast, like co-creation. Um, like where this makes sense to me, and it's very, very interesting actually, and is close to things we've discussed previously, Martin, is like if I just think about this agent, this AI agent, as a team member, and this team member gets a role description, right? So this team member gets, let's take something simple, generate 1,000 leads, for the business, 1,000 interested leads, and then this is like the budget, and this is the frame of what you're allowed to do and not, just as it would be in like a normal organization, right? You have certain mandates, you have certain budgets, you have certain goals, certain responsibilities. Then it makes sense that can be autonomous within that context, right?
Hmm.
So I think
Yeah.
that is very, very valuable. And the same way that we've been discussing it, like if I'm working on something together with AI, I would love it to sort of just help me get it done, not me having to like tell it every step of it. But so there it makes a lot of sense actually. Um, and I guess that's what sort of the basics of sort of prompt engineering is starting to be, is like providing a frame, like you are a marketing expert, um, and then asking it something about marketing, right?
Hmm.
And then it can come up with steps and do it.
Mm.
And I
You can
think,
even you can even tell it you're a marketing beginner. Become an expert as your first step.
yeah, that is interesting. And same thing with like your example of the do research of the oil industry in Asia. What I find quite interesting with these models is they actually need to do work to produce good results. Like you say, they need to iterate. It's not like this way I'm like sci-fi imagining artificial intelligence, right? That it just like zoom, it's created something, like it's used, all the information in the world to produce a hyper intelligent result. Maybe that will come as well. But right now it's actual next word prediction. So it's doing work, using the result of that work to do some more work, using the result of that work to do some more work. So it will probably be relevant to do things like you said. Hey, I have $100. I want in API costs. I want a report of the um, oil industry in Asia specifically. Explore this question, um, and then it will produce a report for that budget potentially. Mm. Yes, that's actually it's very interesting like thing on its own.
Mm.
Definitely that research paper.
And then if we connect these two things, then it becomes super interesting to have the autonomous AI get access to the OpenAI plugins or the ChatGPT plugins, because then the autonomous AI can book the hotels or check the weather or do any one of 1,000 things using Zapier or the plugins that will be in there.
That's gonna be a bit scary for all the people like afraid that the AI is coming for us though. Giving like an autonomous agent access to real capabilities, but that's coming, of course. I mean, that's already coming. And it's gonna be hard to I mean, no one's gonna track all the API calls, right? That the AI does. like all the steps it takes to accomplish something for you.
Mm.
You're just going to be happy that you got it. It might do something else also. In theory, I mean, I'm not get scared
Yeah.
to be honest, but
And the and what the one thing the AutoGPT project does is that they are by default not enabling full autonomy. They are keeping the user in the loop by the AI asking for approval on every step.
mm,
And and of course there's a middle ground as well. You could have a setting like ask the AI, and of course this is where it becomes more, maybe more trust based than engineering, if that makes sense. But like you give it limits, or you say like if it, give every task a score of 1 to 100, and if it's above 50, then ask first, ask the user first. Or if it's like involving real money, or actually affecting the world in some way, then ask the
mm.
user first.
It's interesting though. Like I think personally, like leaving aside the debate whether like AGI will kill us all, like some people are discussing, I think that really won't be like leaving aside whether that's a real risk or not. I think as this gets applied, people won't even think about this. No one, like it will only be like a few intellectuals and researchers that think about this, and maybe some business leaders, etc. But the average user will not want, like they will not feel they need to keep an eye on what their AI is doing for them if it gets the job done. It's like after a while, you like it was very quick until I started like trusting Google Maps more than my own memory. Like that was quite quick, like my own sense of direction. And I think this will be the same, to be honest, for good and bad. Um, but yeah, I think it makes sense in any case to sort of use systems like autonomous AI systems that are very transparent with what they do and like what actions they take so that you can monitor that it didn't do anything stupid, that it didn't send like an email to 1,000 people on your email list with something inappropriate, things like that. You are like, think at least for the coming, until these become
Mm.
much, much more advanced and we are much, much more used to seeing AI perform things for us. We are going to want to monitor it, but not for that reason, not
Mm.
for the kind of sci-fi reason, but for the just like, does it do anything stupid?
Yeah.
Which is also why I think it makes most sense to monitor.
And a really good way, no matter if you're worried about the end of the world or worried about the AI spending the money you have on your PayPal account. What is really good about the this trajectory with AutoGPT and Baby AGI, what they're doing is they're actually putting a normal, like the state of the AI is recorded in natural language in a database where any human or any other software can look and monitor look inside what is going on.
Mm,
With the core of the GPT, that's not possible, but because the core is just 175 billion floats in a database, or like weights, and it's not possible to look inside and see what is going on. It's a black box, and it sort of makes sense if you are worried about the end of the world because of AI, to keep the black box doing only the inner core reasoning, and have it like being fully transparent with what is it thinking, what is
mm.
it planning, by forcing it to have all those plans and thoughts and reasoning in natural language instead of the layers of neural networks.
And that's interesting. I agree. And that's interesting because that's also, I feel, the way that they have gone with GPT-4. It explains what it's going to do before doing it, and then I think it also like often reasons about why it does what it does, right? Either before or after, I can't remember. And I think that, if I correct me if I'm wrong here, but the way I understood it when I read articles about this is a conscious decision by OpenAI to get better results for their users of GPT-4, because they see that the results are better when the AI is forced to set up a plan for how it's going to accomplish your task, and ask for more information when it needs to, and reason about why it's going to do things the way it's going to do it. So it's almost like that's already like they're starting. That's not the core, right? The core is what you say. It's these 175 billion weights, right? But then they built this, I don't know what to call it, this shell around the core, or this sphere around the core with supporting infrastructure that helps you get a good result as a user. And then you can take that, all the work that's been done there, and then you can create these very simple, potentially autonomous agents for specific purposes, where um, kind of the API use is already adapted to explain what it's going to do, plan what it's going to do, reason about why it does something. So I feel like that, yeah, that's the way they've been going, right? Or do you have
Mm.
another
No, that's
understanding?
basically it. Uh, s- Listening to Sam Altman's interview with Lex Friedman, he talked about how they have had to get 100 or hundreds of things right in order to get GPT-4 happen, and they spent something like 7 or 8 years on creating it. It feels like everything is going really really fast, but that's just because they are making decisions to release results of their work very fast. It has taken a lot of time, a long time for them to get here.
Yeah, they've really like been loading up to be like in their releases now that they got
Mm.
going.
Yes,
Or at least that's been the result, whether or not it's been conscious. I
yeah,
think this
and
makes
then
sense.
they
No, go on.
wanted to keep the momentum by releasing by announcing the plugin system before it's possible to make it available. But I think that is in order to fill it up with useful plugins before releasing to the general public.
Yeah, I really think that Sam Altman is has a real gift for strategy. That's what I sense from the way they're executing, right? Of course, like they're really good at like the technology and all that stuff, but just the way they're playing this really high stakes game versus some of the biggest companies in the world, is quite amazing just from that standpoint.
Yeah, and he's been sitting at the top of Y Combinator for a long time, just looking at what's and having as a primary function in his job to look at what is the right thing to do in a company, what is the wrong thing to do in a company. So it makes sense that he is a really good strategist
Yeah,
after that.
yeah. I think what you just did makes a lot of sense for us to do in these episodes, by the way, is mention like other things that that we've been reading or listening to that are valuable, and then we can put them in the show notes. So I agree. Like the Lex Friedman interview with Sam Altman was amazing. I mean, that's on YouTube. It's
Hmm.
just a Google. I also listened to the chief scientist. I'm not sure I can pronounce his name. Um, the chief scientist of OpenAI. He had, yeah, I think that was also Lex Friedman I listened to. No, I listened to the one with the Lunar Society, which was also amazing. He's a very, very interesting guy to listen to if you just want to understand. I mean, I guess the science of this. Um, is there anything else you've been reading that? And I mean, of course, the Chat GPT like plugin release, which was also on YouTube. We can put that link in the show notes as well. I think that's very worthwhile. Like 10 minutes, seeing the different use cases in this new interface. And you mentioned, of course, this research paper. Is there anything else you've been reading or listening to lately that's you think are valuable for people to listen to?
Mostly, I spend my time right now reading, following up on the proceedings of all the open source projects coming out on top of GPT. There was this announcement last week as well about GPT for all, which is a fine tuning of Facebook's leaked AI, and the Llama um, model that came out and was sort of leaked out and there's been a lot of open source projects coming out built on top of that. And GPT for all was a fine tuning that made it more uh, um, chat GPT like. And um, there was a couple of things interesting with that. One thing was to try a more old school um, language model, because it's very noticeable how ChatGPT is fine tuned to hold a conversation. And then when you after I have tuned myself into having a conversation with an AI, I've sort of gotten out of the habit of writing the prompts to make it work myself the way we worked a year ago with GPT-3 and DaVinci. And what we're doing now is relying a lot on the conversational skills of the AI. And with Llama and GPT for all, none all of that is gone. So the stuff coming out is a lot more raw, and you have to really wrangle with it to produce good results. But it's still just generating text. And of course, anything built on Llama cannot be used commercially. And and but what they're doing, the GPT for all team, what they're doing is to put together an completely open source language model to train and fine tune one of the existing open source models that will be available for commercial projects. um, and and that will be interesting to see what they if they can produce quality that comes on par with the GPT models of OpenAI or some of the other proprietary models like Claude, that people are um, just now getting availability to.
Yeah, on the topic of that, I think we're going to round off now. But I also listened to a really good interview with Ahmad, who's the founder of Stability AI, Find Stable Diffusion, etc. On Real Vision, I think it was on YouTube. I can also put the link there. And it's going to be quite interesting to see like how 'cause they're basically doing an open source models of this, like all these models. They're training Stable Chat now, which is going to be their ChatGPT competitor. They already have the Stable Diffusion, like the image generation competitor. I think they're going for all modalities now. I think they also had they had a bunch of cool releases, like they can have full image editability via prompts now, so you can take your own image and then edit it via prompts, etc. um, and their main point was, or his main point was, that there's a bunch of private data out there and they're not going to want to send that to OpenAI, which, yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense, like cloud versus on-prem software, that a bunch of companies are going to want to keep it like fully controlled in-house, especially when they have like valuable proprietary data sets, etc. But yeah, that's definitely worth a listen, I think.
Mm.
And maybe something to dive into in a future episode as well. Like how will this landscape shape up now with different types of actors? I've been thinking a bit about that, how like this will play out now with this, with the plugins and with this, these closed models and these open source models. So that would be an interesting topic for another episode.
Awesome. We'll put links to all of these in this description of this podcast episode. And I think we are going to close out this recording. And if you have thoughts or comments as a listener to co-creating with the AI, let us know and get in touch, and we'll be happy to bring up the topics that you care about and want to hear about. Thank you, Rasmus.
Thanks a lot, Martin. See you soon.
See you soon. And dear listener, tune into our next episode in the world of co-creating with AI.